0 seconds. The Hayward Fault last produced a major destructive earthquake in 1868. Paleoseismic work on its southern section suggests major events have occurred roughly every 150 to 170 years on average. That interval has already passed. Tonight, the Hayward and Rogers Creek faults rupture together. A magnitude 7.4 combined break beginning beneath San Pablo Bay. This is fundamentally different from the 1989 Loma Prieta earthquake, which ruptured a fault segment well south of the bay. The Hayward Fault runs directly through Berkeley, Oakland, Hayward, and Fremont. The rupture isn't approaching the cities, it begins inside them. 1 second later, deep beneath San Pablo Bay, the fault suddenly slips. The rupture races in 2 directions simultaneously, south along the Hayward Fault toward Oakland and the East Bay, north along Rogers Creek toward Santa Rosa. The first seismic waves explode outward through the crust at several kilometers per second. In most of the East Bay, the earthquake alert and the shaking arrive within seconds of each other. In the communities closest to San Pablo Bay, the shaking arrives first. 5 seconds later, Richmond and Berkeley are hit. The rupture races south through the northern East Bay. Richmond and Berkeley enter violent, near-fault shaking before most people understand what's happening. The Hayward Fault runs directly through the UC Berkeley campus and stadium area, right through it. Road pavement buckles sideways where it crosses the fault trace. Buried water and gas connections crossing the rupture snap. Older, unreinforced masonry buildings begin losing walls before the shaking reaches its peak. A student studying in Doe Library slides with her chair across the floor as the lights fail. A bus driver on Telegraph Avenue can't tell if his vehicle is moving or the road is. The emergency alert reaches phones that are already bouncing off desks. 10 seconds later, Oakland takes the direct hit. The Hayward Fault passes through the city itself. Eastern Oakland receives violent near-fault shaking and direct surface displacement. The ground on one side of the fault moving several feet relative to the other. Dozens of vulnerable buildings collapse. Masonry falls into streets straight at people walking. Warehouse racking systems and heavy machinery come down on workers inside. Freeway structures experience violent lateral loads they were never designed for. Downtown and the waterfront sit on softer ground, not astride every meter of fault trace, but shaking long and hard on mud and fill that amplifies ground motion. The water in the estuary sloshes against its banks. Container yards at the Port of Oakland deform as the ground beneath them shifts and begins liquefying. On the elevated 880 freeway, drivers are on a roadway actively moving beneath their wheels with nowhere to stop and nowhere to pull off. 20 seconds later, San Francisco starts coming apart. The city isn't sitting on the Hayward Fault, but a magnitude 7.4 produces severe regional shaking across the bay. High-rises in the financial district sway violently. Older buildings in Soma and the Mission take structural damage. Along the waterfront, the Embarcadero, Mission Bay, the Marina District, soft fill, and bay mud begin liquefying during the shaking itself. The ground ripples, cracks, and in some places drops several inches as the water-saturated material beneath it loses its strength. In the Marina, a crack opens along a block that flooded in 1989 for exactly the same reason. The soil here was always borrowed time. People inside towers are thrown between walls and furniture. Elevators stop automatically across dozens of high-rises, trapping thousands of people in dark steel boxes between floors while the building above them keeps swaying. Stairwells fill before the shaking ends. On Embarcadero, a section of the waterfront promenade drops and tilts toward the bay as the fill beneath it flows. 30 seconds later, Hayward and Fremont are torn by the fault. The southern rupture drives through San Leandro, Hayward, and Fremont. The cities carrying the fault's name receiving some of its worst direct effects. Streets crossing the fault trace shift laterally by meters. Rail lines bend out of alignment. Water, sewage, electrical, and gas lines crossing the rupture are severed simultaneously. Structures built directly across the trace have their foundations pulled in opposite directions. One side moves, the other doesn't. Emergency crews leaving fire stations discover that some of their normal routes no longer connect across the fault. The road ends. A few feet away, on the other side of the rupture, the road continues, but the gap between them is not crossable by a fire engine. Dispatchers are receiving calls from both sides of streets that no longer physically meet. 45 seconds later, Santa Rosa is slammed. The northern rupture has been racing up Rogers Creek toward the North Bay while all of this was happening in the south. Santa Rosa sits above a sedimentary basin that amplifies earthquake shaking, and Rogers Creek has been mapped directly through the city. Buildings fail, utility networks rupture. Slope failures hit roads in the surrounding hills. Santa Rosa's emergency dispatchers begin receiving collapse calls before they've understood what happened in Oakland, before they realize they're inside the same earthquake, the same fault system, the same minute. 1 minute later, the main shock ends. The Bay Area is already broken. Only now does the regional picture start to emerge, and it's worse than anyone can fully process in one pass. The East Bay has collapsed structures, surface rupture along tens of kilometers of fault trace, broken roads, failed utilities across the entire corridor from Richmond to Fremont. San Francisco has major building damage, trapped elevator passengers, and a waterfront where the ground is still settling. Santa Rosa has taken a direct near-fault hit. The Bay margins, Oakland waterfront, Alameda, Emeryville, Richmond shoreline are showing the uneven ground of liquefaction. BART has automatically stopped across the entire system. Bay Bridge and other crossings are halted pending inspection. Hundreds of thousands of people are suddenly separated from wherever they need to be by a transportation network whose condition nobody knows yet. The cell network is saturated. People stand in the street looking at the dust rising from Oakland across the water and try their phones again and again. 5 minutes later, hundreds of fires begin. Gas lines are broken across the entire rupture corridor. Electrical shorts, industrial accidents, and ruptured appliance connections ignite fires in Oakland, Berkeley, Hayward, and San Leandro simultaneously. Not dozens of fires, hundreds, spread across the urban fabric faster than any dispatch system can track them. Then firefighters encounter the problem that turns a bad fire situation into a catastrophic one. The water mains are broken too. Hydrants across East Bay neighborhoods produce a weak flow, then a trickle, then nothing. A crew arriving at a burning residential block opens 4 hydrants in sequence and gets pressure from none of them. People move propane cylinders and fuel containers out of garages because the building next to them is already burning and the engines aren't going to arrive in time. 10 minutes later, hospitals are overwhelmed. The injury wave hits emergency departments across the region simultaneously. Crush injuries from collapsed structures, severe bleeding from glass and masonry. Hospital parking lots become triage areas. Surgeons are making decisions about who gets the operating room and who waits. And some of the people who wait will not survive the wait. 30 minutes later, the first damaging aftershocks hit. Aftershocks begin rattling the entire rupture zone. Most are smaller. Some are strong enough to damage structures already weakened by the main shock. Walls that were cracked but standing collapse on the second or third shake. Fresh landslides come down in the Oakland and Berkeley hills. Fire crews retreat from unstable structures during stronger shocks, losing ground on fires that don't retreat with them. A large magnitude 7.4 generates aftershocks for months. The sequence tonight will contain dozens of M5 plus events and at least one significantly larger. 1 hour later, California declares a full-scale emergency. Local fire, police, and EMS resources are stretched across thousands of simultaneous incidents. California begins mobilizing state resources. Search and rescue teams move toward known collapse sites. Security goes to damaged hospitals, fuel facilities, and evacuation routes. The infrastructure picture is stark. BART stopped, freeway corridors blocked, the Port of Oakland disabled, multiple water systems failing, telecommunications overloaded. Traffic across the region isn't simply heavy. Drivers are encountering collapsed overpasses, buckled road surfaces, dead signals, and emergency closures simultaneously. Some abandon vehicles and continue on foot. A man trying to reach his daughter's school in Hayward drives 4 different routes before finding one that goes through. When he gets there, the school is intact and his daughter is already in the parking lot with her class. 6 hours later, Fire fronts grow while water disappears. 6 hours after the earthquake ended, the disaster is larger. Broken mains have drained large sections of the water network, and firefighters have stopped asking dispatch for pressure readings. They already know the answer. Individual fires in Oakland and Berkeley are consuming entire blocks. The East Bay Hills, which burned catastrophically in 1991 in a fire started by a single downed power line, now have hundreds of simultaneous ignition points and wind that has shifted toward the residential slopes. Fire departments are no longer attempting to suppress everything. They are choosing which blocks they can realistically defend and withdrawing from the rest, marking the perimeters with whatever equipment they still have. People ordered out of intact houses 2 streets from the fire line leave and don't look back. Because looking back means seeing flames at the end of the road you just drove down. Water is the other emergency nobody foresaw at scale. Hospitals, dialysis centers, and facilities that need clean water continuously are calling state emergency lines asking when pressure will return. The answer is weeks. Some areas will wait months. In the interim, water is being trucked in by FEMA and National Guard convoys moving through the same damaged roads that every other emergency vehicle is fighting over. 12 hours later, the federal response arrives. California has requested federal assistance. FEMA urban search and rescue task forces begin deploying into the Bay Area. Teams trained for operations in collapsed structures, equipped with listening equipment, cutting tools, and medical support for people trapped under concrete. Federal logistics move water, generators, communications equipment, and medical supplies into the region. Engineering teams start assessing bridges, highways, and water infrastructure. Rescue priorities become systematic in ways that feel brutal from the outside. Known live victims first. Unstable structures where survival is possible, but unconfirmed, next. Buildings with no signs of survivability, they wait. A team leader spray paints a code on the wall of a collapsed apartment building and moves to the next address on the list. Night settles over the Bay Area with thousands of unresolved incidents. The fires are visible from Sacramento. In Oakland, blocks that were residential neighborhoods this morning are now active fire zones with no residents and no firefighters. Just flame working through one structure into the next without interruption. 1 day later, a major aftershock knocks damaged buildings down. During the first 24 hours, aftershock activity remains intense. A magnitude 5+ aftershock hits the already damaged region. Buildings that survived the main shock with cracked columns and compromised walls suffer additional collapses. Fresh landslides close roads that rescue teams had just started using. New gas leaks ignite additional fires. Search teams are pulled from unstable debris fields and stand outside waiting for the shaking to stop, watching the buildings they were about to enter. In San Francisco, a residential building in Soma that was evacuated but declared structurally marginal after the main shock loses its southern wall during the aftershock. The building falls into the street. There was nobody inside. The evacuation order held. 3 days later, the Bay Area is still under active emergency operations. Search and rescue teams are still cutting through collapsed buildings. Major fires are being contained in some East Bay districts while new flare-ups occur elsewhere. Aftershocks continue every day. National Guard units protect closed districts, fuel deliveries, and supply depots. Theft is spreading through some closed commercial zones. Organized groups moving through damaged warehouses and retail blocks with vehicles, working quickly before patrols return. Police are aware of it, but they cannot prioritize it. Their active operations are still life safety focused: collapsed structures, medical emergencies, evacuation enforcement, and fire zones. In some neighborhoods, residents have set up their own overnight watches. In others, there's nobody left to watch. The block evacuated 3 days ago and hasn't come back. The Port of Oakland's partial shutdown is sending ripple effects up and down the California supply chain. Goods sitting in containers offshore can't be unloaded. Manufacturers waiting on components are halting production lines in cities that felt nothing but a distant shimmy. Grocery distribution to East Bay stores is restricted to whatever routes the road network still allows, which is fewer than normal and slower than usual. 1 week later, the M6 class aftershock hits the region. It hits structures that have already absorbed the main shock, days of smaller aftershocks, fire damage, and water intrusion. Several red-tagged buildings partially collapse. Fresh debris falls from high-rises that appeared stable. Hillside failures reopen roads that were just cleared. Power circuits restored earlier in the week trip again. Rescue operations return to emergency mode. Companies that plan to reopen this week cancel those plans. Some cancel them indefinitely, moving staff to offices in Sacramento, San Jose, or remotely, in a shift that may never fully reverse. Insurers and engineers expand their inspection zones. Warehouses holding undamaged inventory remain closed because the buildings themselves still can't be trusted. The tech and finance companies concentrated in San Francisco's financial district and Oakland's emerging business districts are conducting damage assessments of a different kind. Which employees have stable housing? Which offices are accessible? Which servers are running? How long can a company operate in this condition before clients start looking elsewhere? Some are already making calls to real estate brokers in other cities. 2 weeks later, infrastructure failure becomes the dominant disaster. The large fires are largely controlled. The fault is no longer moving dramatically at the surface. The Bay Area is nowhere near functioning normally. Large East Bay areas have no normal water service. Temporary lines, tanker trucks, and emergency distribution points supply neighborhoods, while repair crews work in streets that keep moving during aftershocks. Some BART sections have reopened. Others remain closed for track, power, or structural repairs, and the reduced network carries far more passengers than it was designed for with far fewer trains. Damaged highway connections create bottlenecks that add hours to ordinary commutes. Thousands of buildings require detailed structural inspection before they can reopen. Some downtown office towers are standing perfectly upright but remain closed. Their frames survived, but their elevators, fire suppression systems, and utilities cannot be cleared for occupancy. Tens of thousands of workers are shut out of offices that look fine from the sidewalk. Their employers are paying rent on space they can't use while trying to figure out where their people are supposed to go. 1 month later. The Bay Area is facing a historic economic disaster. 1 month later, the physical map of the region is intact. The functional map is not. The East Bay remains the center of the direct rupture disaster. San Francisco has damaged high-rises, waterfront ground failures, and closed buildings. The city lost no major landmark, but it lost months of economic productivity. Santa Rosa is still completing structural and utility repairs from the Rogers Creek rupture. The aftershock sequence is nowhere near finished. A major earthquake at this magnitude generates aftershocks for months. USGS modeling for the smaller, Hayward-only M7.0 scenario projected roughly 500,000 fewer Bay Area jobs in the first year, an 8% decline in regional economic output during that period, and a recovery timeline potentially spanning a decade for the hardest-hit counties. The Hayward Fault finished rupturing in less than a minute. By tearing directly through the cities, utilities, and transport systems of the East Bay, that minute could keep the Bay Area broken for years.